already explained, my name is Niamh McCabe and I look after the Cultural Contact Point, which is the contact point for the culture programme in Ireland, which is based in the Arts Council. So what I'm just going to do is go through, we'll be discussing different projects and things later, so this is just, what I just want to do is set the background in terms of what are the types of funding available, what kind of organisations can apply. It's the pretty technical stuff, but it's just the kind of background information you need to have to think about what's appropriate for your organisation. So, just to say firstly that the way the European Union works in terms of culture, there's a couple of different directions it moves in. The culture programme, about which I'm going to speak mostly. Another initiative is the European Capitals of Culture, which I'm sure everyone in Ireland is aware of because of Quirk in 2005. And it also runs a series of prizes. Sorry, the music one is the Border Breakers one actually. So it looks after these different prizes in popular music, contemporary architecture, contemporary literature and cultural heritage. But I'm just going to mostly speak about the culture programme, because that's the remit here. So what is the EU Culture Programme? It is, of course, a European programme. There are 36 participating countries, so obviously it goes beyond the countries of the EU to the European Economic Area, the Western Balkans. Bosnia and Herzegovina joined just this year, so that's the most recent edition. The way it works is in that it supports transnational cultural cooperation and mobility of cultural products and workers, which is a lovely European mouthful, but basically it's about moving, provides funding for the movement of both people who work in the arts and the actual artistic works. So whether that be a theatre piece, a visual arts show, a piece of music, whatever, it's about the movement of both the works and the people. It is managed at a European level by an executive agency, an agency of the European Commission. So all the assessment procedures and all the decisions are made at a European level. And then, as I mentioned, there is a cultural contact point in every participating country. So, the objectives of the programme. So this is kind of what underlines any of the decisions that are made within the culture programme. It's about, as I mentioned, these are the three things that will keep popping up. The promotion of the transnational mobility of people in the cultural sector, so they want to encourage movement within the countries. The transnational mobility of the cultural works and products, as I've mentioned, and the promotion of intercultural dialogue. The first two are obviously far more quantifiable, and that's something that if anyone's ever, I'm sure some of you have obviously filled in these applications, you'll know that they want to see how many people are moving, how many trips people are taking, all that stuff is quite quantifiable. And then the promotion of intercultural dialogue, which is something that's under constant discussion at a European level because the European Union still have not given a wonderful definition of what exactly it is they mean by that. So what the culture programme is not. It's not for financing projects that only have a national scope. I think that's pretty obvious. Unlike some European funding that comes into this country that might just be for something on a national level, this has to have these projects have to have a European remit. They have to have this kind of cooperation between countries. It's not managed at a national level, as I've mentioned. It's managed by the executive agency, and it's not for supporting the audiovisual sector. For the most part, that's supported by the media programme, which you'll probably be aware of. There's some slight exceptions to that, but that's how it works for the most part. Who can be funded? What kind of organisations are we talking about here? So it's public or private organisations with their main activities in the cultural sector. So that's quite open. Must be acting as non-profit making. I think this is useful as well. It was the case until quite recently that it had to be a non-profit making organisation, but that's changed relatively recently to allow that they need to be non-profit making in this project. So it's slightly different way of looking at things. The types of organisations, cultural organisations, institutions, museums, universities, and any sort of cultural organisations, basically. The way it's broken down, in the most basic way, the way I look at it is strand 1 and strand 2, which the way that breaks down is the first one is mostly project type funding. There's a number of different, I'm going to just describe 2 or 3 of them. There's a number of different types of project funding that all fall under strand 1. It's support for cultural projects who have common objectives beyond frontiers. So that's what that's about. The strand 2 is more of a revenue or operating funding. It's for organisations that are active at a European level, so they need to have members, I'll go into that later, they need to have members in a wide number of countries participating in the project, or participating in the organisation, again in the field of culture of course. So the first one of the three I'm going to look at, the three types of project funding. The first one is the big one, which Jane kind of mentioned. The way this is a multi-annual cooperation project, so obviously it's over a number of years, it's over 3 to 5 years. It must involve a minimum of 6 partners from 6 eligible countries. So it's the big projects. For this type of application, you must request a grant of between 200 and 500,000 euro per year. And this lovely phrase, present a balanced budget that complies with the EU funding ceiling of 50%, which basically means the Commission will give you 50%. So the grant that you're asking for, say, of 200 grand for the year, must represent a maximum 50% of the total budget of that project. So that's...
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, sure. Basically, it's that they will provide. Just say your budget for the project for the year is 400,000.
They will for 1 year. So
yeah, this is an example. Yeah, exactly. They will provide you with up to 50% of that. So they will provide you with say 200 grand, say in that case. If that makes sense. They'll provide 50%.
But not the total. No.
Of the total eligible costs for that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every other year.
Sorry?
For every other year.
Yeah, exactly. That's just for that particular year.
50% of the whole budget.
Yeah, 50% of the eligible budget, yeah.
And does it have to be 6 different eligible countries, or
yes.
2 people from one country?
You can have two from the same country if you want, but you still need at least 6 countries represented. For example, the one that we spoke about earlier, the improvised music company, one of the partners is Culture Ireland, but there has to be 4 in that because they're from the same country, so they have to ask.
Maybe you could clarify what's covered by eligible costs.
Yeah.
Sure, eligible costs is, it depends on what particular strand you're talking about. I suppose it's something that really we talk to people when they're making an application, but there are certain things that which aren't eligible, such as contributions in kind and subcontracting. There's quite particular rules around them, and if I was going through an application or a budget with someone, I'd break that down, but that's just an idea. There are some things such as contributions in kind which aren't eligible.
And what do you call subcontracting? I would consider nearly everyone we work with to be subcontracting.
It's something, it's a rule they've brought in over the last year or so. Basically, there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, subcontracting they want to see people being employed rather than subcontracted, because in some cases when projects were undertaken, a lot of the work would be subcontracted, and therefore the actual partner wouldn't be really doing the majority, wouldn't be carrying out most of the project that they had.
So it's only people who, the eligible costs in terms of individuals would be, you'd have to pay PRSI, all that.
Well, yes, but artist fees obviously are eligible because of the nature of the culture program.
Separate.
Yeah, but what they mean by subcontracting, they mean like particular technical things that might be brought on board. So this is the slightly smaller strand, which, as Jane said, is where a lot of people really tend to at least start off getting involved. Sorry, I'm in danger of losing my voice, so I'm sorry about this. There must be a minimum of 3 partners from 3 eligible countries, so it's more manageable. It's the maximum of up to 2 years, and must request a grant of between 50 and 200,000 per year. Again, it's 50%, so that 50 or 200 per year will represent 50% of the budget for that year, whether it be a 1 or a 2 year project. So, and just to say that those 2 that I've just spoken of, you have all this information.
Sorry, question about the money?
Yeah.
The grant 50 to 100k per year, or overall?
Per year.
Okay.
And can I just clarify as well, you said that they wouldn't accept in-kind expenditure, so if it's 50k and so say 100, you're putting in, the project's going to cost 100,000, they won't acknowledge if you're saying 50,000 of your contribution is going to be your support of staff in kind?
Well, no, you see, the way that is, it basically all needs to be, there needs to be a financial trail for it all. So if you are allocating a certain amount of your staff's time to a project and you can timesheet that and you can show the payments for that, that's absolutely fine. They just need to be able to quantify it. They need to be able to prove that the work which you're doing and you're getting funding for would not have happened otherwise, that you are dedicating it to this project. So that's, yeah.
Are there other trail requirements, like are there separate accounts required?
There is, it needs to go into the main lead partner needs to go, it will get paid, and yes, there is financial reporting at there's an interim report and then a final report which requires an external audit.
Yeah, but is there a separate bank account established for the funding?
Yeah. So,
One more question about
Yeah.
sorry, just is
I'm
it
trying to keep this brief, so I'm sorry.
it could be questions for later potentially, but does everything need to be receipted or does it need to be audited or both?
It needs to be receipted so that there can be an external audit, and then there's an external audit form and certificate which you then send off, and a list of the invoices and receipts. So the first two that I've just spoken of there, the information will be in the deadline information there. The deadlines for those is in October, annually at the moment. This one now that I'm going to just mention briefly is in May. This is cooperation projects with third countries. In most ways it's similar to the one that I just spoke about. There needs to be 3 countries. The difference here being that there must be at least one partner from a third country. And the way it works is that the European Commission decide on a year-by-year basis who their third countries, who their priorities are this year. Last year there was a whole bunch of countries as the third countries. We had Ukraine, Armenia, Georgia, there was 10 different countries. This year they've selected one, and it's Mexico. So if anyone wants to work with projects in Mexico, this is the year to do it. Yeah, the rationale behind this is, I don't know. This one I just want to draw everyone's perhaps particular attention to because it's new. The support for festivals was new as of November of 2010. It was just announced during the summer actually of 2010, and then there was a deadline in November, which was rather short notice for people to get things together. It came off the back of a lot of applications under one of the other strands, 1.2.1 that I've mentioned, were coming from festivals, and a lot of them, there wasn't a very high success rate within the festival applications. In 1.2.1, and they kind of looked at this and sort of said, what way can we tweak this? And so they came up with this 1.3.6. The lovely decimals are great, but you do get used to them, I promise. So this one, again, it's the same 3 priorities. So it's about the mobility of European professionals, the circulation of the actual works, and intercultural dialogue. The way the festivals one works is that they will fund elements of, they won't fund the entire festival. What they will do is they will fund elements of the festival that have to do with the European, so the bringing in of European work, basically European either workers or works. So there's only certain elements of a festival that will be eligible. That's why the eligibility criteria kind of are different based on what strand of funding it is. So in order to be eligible for this, you need to have in your festival, it needs to represent work from at least 7 other countries participating in the culture programme. So I think quite a lot of festivals are doing that anyway, but that's the kind of minimum criteria. The way it works is that there's maximum support of €100,000 per year. It's per year now. There was a 3-year possibility last year, but because the culture programme as it actually stands is coming to an end in 2013, they're just offering this on an annual basis now. So yeah, the maximum support is €100,000, and it's in this case it's 60% of eligible costs. So it's slightly more than the 50 for the other ones. So the results, I would have more to say about this if they had published this year's results yet, which are due to be published at the end of March. It'll be interesting to see because there were a few Irish festivals that did apply. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what direction was taken and what was prioritised and what was funded and how those decisions were made. These are the award criteria. Again, this is in the programme guide which you'll have. I don't want to dwell on it too much.
I will talk about it.
Brilliant, okay. Yeah, and I think Jane would probably be a good person to talk about, having actually been involved in the assessment process as well. There's weighting given to these different award criteria, and that's on which basis an assessment is made and a recommendation is made. So strand 2, I'm only going to mention briefly, I wanted to talk mostly about the different types of project strand. Strand 2 is for cultural organisations which are active at a European level. This is the kind of revenue or operating funding that I was talking about. In this case, there's no public authorities. Obviously, there are no individuals, as there are no individuals. Individuals aren't eligible to apply to the culture programme. In this case, it's up to a maximum of 80%. The idea behind this really is that a lot of these organisations that are funded under Strand 2, because their remit is European, they might not be necessarily a priority for national funding. What we're talking about is organisations such as the European Festivals Association or the European Association of Youth Orchestras. So basically the idea is these organisations, while they're obviously based in one particular country, have members scattered all across Europe. So they need to have at least 15 members. So that's how that works. As I said, it's operating costs for permanent activities, and their grants will be provided or are provided from 100,000 to 600,000 for a year. For one example with an Irish, because I worked on them with it, there's an International Association of Music Information Centres, which has organisations all over Europe, and the Irish organisation involved in that, or as a member of that, is the Contemporary Music Centre, and they would have been involved in drawing up the application for.
They hosted an event in the coach-house last
Exactly,
yeah.
Which is right. So this is the types of, as I mentioned, the types of Strand 2 funding ambassadors, which would be like I said, the Association of Youth Orchestras, the advocacy networks such as the International Association of Music Information Centres. That's kind of the level on which they work. So that's go on with that. And then just to say, finally, and I hope importantly, that the role of the CCP in each country, the remit is set by the European Commission. So what we do is strictly decided by them. The idea is to increase the awareness of the culture programme. So over the last 6 months or whatever since I've been involved, we've had seminars with different sectors and in different parts of the country. I had one in Galway, one in Cork, and worked with in traditional arts and in visual arts, and now I see this one in theatre as well, and there's one for the cultural heritage sector next month as well. Speaking at different kind of professional events when invited, speaking about the culture programme, just to increase awareness of the programme, which is not particularly high in this country, and to facilitate participation in the culture programme. And in this vein, I think I just want to say to everyone here that if you have ideas for projects, or there's a project you want to be involved in that you've seen going on somewhere else, or you want to become involved in a network or whatever, just do contact the Cultural Contact Point. I'm part of the network of cultural contact points all over Europe, and can help you make up links that way, but also can help people put together applications. And this is, I suppose, or develop projects that might come to applications. Sometimes they don't. I've worked with quite a few applications that for one reason or another don't actually get made. But the idea is that I can help people make applications, sit down with them, and talk through what the criteria are, as I've done here, but obviously in far more detail, the eligible costs, as we mentioned, the budgeting, all the kind of technical ends of things that tend to sometimes put people off for applying for the culture programme. I think that's me. I hope you haven't gone too long. I'll be here for the rest of the day anyway, and as I said, please do contact me if you have any projects or any ideas about the culture programme that you'd like to just